My Amish neighbor Daniel feeds a family of 6 off a piece of ground smaller than most American backyards, an eighth of an acre. That's about 5,000 square feet, and a good chunk of that is paths and flowers. Yet his family eats out of that garden through 3 winters. Most of us, myself included, for 30 years, plant twice that space and still run out by January. I planted a little of everything the wrong way for 2 decades. Daniel plants a lot of the right things in the right order, in the right spot. Today, I'll walk you through exactly how he does it step by step. And stick with me to the end, because I'll share the one rule Daniel follows that lets a single bed feed his family 3 separate times in one season. Let me put a real number on that eighth of an acre. 5,000 square feet sounds like a lot, but once you take out the paths, the flower borders, and the little orchard at the edge, Daniel is really working about 1,800 square feet. 4 beds, each one 12 feet by 30. That's it. And out of those 4 beds, Ruth's root cellar stays stocked into a 3rd winter. My old plot was twice that size, and by January, I was buying potatoes at the store. For 2 decades, I gardened the wrong way. I planted a little of everything in tidy single rows, and I let each bed grow 1 crop and 1 harvest before it sat bare for the rest of the season. That's the mistake almost every American gardener makes. I'm going to walk you through 5 steps Daniel uses to beat it in order. And stick with me to the end, because I'll share the one rule that lets a single bed feed his family 3 separate times in one season. Step 1, build deep, living soil. Here's the thing. You can't pack plants in tight if the ground underneath them is dead and hard. Densely planted vegetables compete fiercely for water and nutrients, and only rich living soil can feed that many roots at once. Daniel has never owned a rototiller, and he's been gardening that same plot for 50 years. About 18 years ago, he got me to stop tilling too. Instead of a machine, I use a broad fork, the German U-shaped kind, hand-forged by a blacksmith right here in Lancaster County. You step it into the ground, rock it back, and lift. It loosens the soil a foot down without flipping it over or chopping it to pieces. Now here's where most people mess up. They run a rototiller through the bed every spring because that's what their father did, and that's exactly what I did for 15 years. Tilling shreds the fungal networks and the earthworm channels that hold soil structure together. You get a fluffy seed bed for about 3 weeks, and then it collapses into a hard crust the first time it rains. That crust is the enemy of dense planting. What Daniel does instead is feed the soil from the top. Every spring he spreads 2 to 3 inches of aged compost across the bed and works it gently into the top 4 to 6 inches. The worms pull the rest down for him, and that compost comes from a pile that never stops. He adds to it every single day of the year. He told me once, the pile is the heartbeat of the garden. If the pile stops, the garden stops. I didn't fully understand that for years. Do this for 1 season, and you'll feel the difference when you push your hand into the bed. It gives. It's dark and crumbly, and it smells alive. That's soil that can hold a dense planting without collapsing, and dense planting is the whole game from here on out. Step 2, plant calories and keepers. Not a little of everything. This is where I wasted the most years. I planted what looked fun in the seed catalog. A few tomato plants, some lettuce, a couple zucchini, a row of green beans. By August, my counter was overflowing. By January, the freezer held 3 sad bags of green beans and a jar of homemade salsa. That was my whole winter harvest from a plot twice the size of Daniel's. Daniel ranks every crop by 2 things: how many calories it gives back per square foot and how long it stores. Then he gives the most space to the winters. Potatoes are at the top. You know, he pulls real weight off a small bed, the kind of yield where a 4x4 patch gives you close to 100 pounds. Winter squash is next because a cured butternut sits on a shelf for 3 to 6 months without a freezer or a jar. Then dry beans, onions, carrots, beets, and storage cabbage. Every one of those holds for months in the right conditions. Here's where most people go wrong. They fill the best beds with watery crops that don't keep. Lettuce that wilts in a day, a glut of summer squash nobody can eat fast enough. It's a lot of growing for food that's gone by October. There's nothing wrong with a little lettuce, but if every bed is lettuce and zucchini, you've engineered yourself an empty winter. I'm not saying skip the fresh eating. Daniel grows plenty for the table in summer, but the backbone of those 4 beds is food built to last. When you walk through Ruth's root cellar in February, potatoes in bins, carrots packed in damp sand, onions braided and hanging, you understand the difference. That cellar is the payoff for choosing keepers over novelties. Do this step right, and you stop gardening for August and start gardening for January, February, and March. Step 3, plant on a grid, not in rows. This one took me an embarrassingly long time to see. I planted in single rows with wide walking paths between them, the way my father did, the way the seed packets tell you to. And when you do that, you waste more than half your bed surface on bare dirt. You only step on Daniel plants in blocks. He spaces every plant evenly in all directions, close enough that the leaves of neighboring plants will touch when they reach full size. Carrots go 2 to 3 inches apart, beets 3 to 4, onions 4 inches, lettuce 8 to 10. The goal is a solid canopy of leaves with no bare ground showing through. Now here's where most people mess up. They read the row spacing off the back of the seed packet, the number that says rows 18 inches apart, and they follow it for a block planting. That spacing is written for tractor cultivation, not for a hand-tended Amish bed. Follow it, and you'll grow half the food the bed could give you, with the other half feeding nothing but weeds. When the leaves close over and touch, something good happens. That canopy shades the soil. Weed seeds can't get the light to sprout, so you stop weeding almost entirely. The shaded ground holds moisture, so you water less. The plants become their own living mulch. Daniel's beds in July look like one solid carpet of green. You can't see a speck of soil between the plants, and that's exactly how he wants it. The first time I grid planted a bed of beets, I thought I'd crowded them too tight and ruined the whole thing. They sized up beautifully, and I pulled nearly double what that bed had ever given me in rows. That's the small win here. Same bed, same soil, same water, and twice the harvest because you stop paying rent on bare paths. Step 4. Grow up, not just out. Once the ground is full, the only direction left is up, and most American gardeners ignore it completely. Daniel grows a surprising amount of his food in the air above the bed, on trellises and supports that turn a narrow strip of ground into a wall of food. He trellises pole beans, cucumbers, peas, and even the smaller winter squash on sturdy supports 6 to 7 feet tall. A pole bean climbing a trellis gives you several times the harvest of a bush bean, taking up the same patch of ground, and it keeps producing for weeks longer. Cucumbers run up netting instead of sprawling across 4 feet of bed. Small winter squash and melons climb too. You cradle the heavier fruits in a little sling of cloth so they don't tear loose. Here's where people go wrong. They plant bush varieties of everything because bush sounds easier, and those plants sprawl out and hog the ground that 3 other crops could be using. A bush cucumber flopped across the soil is shading out space that a trellis vine would have left open for lettuce underneath. When you grow vertical, a bed only 30 inches wide can yield like a bed twice that footprint. You're stacking harvests in the same square foot, vines overhead, roots and greens below. Daniel's pole beans climb a trellis at the north end of each bed, set there on purpose so the tall plants don't shade the shorter ones. I'll be honest with you, the first trellis I built looked like something a strong wind would flatten. Daniel showed me how to anchor the posts deep and string the lines tight, build it solid the first time, because a trellis that collapses in an August thunderstorm with a full crop of beans on it is a heartbreak you only need once. Get it up and anchored, and you've doubled the bed without buying another inch of ground. Step 5, fill every gap. Daniel never lets bare soil sit and grow nothing but weeds. The instant there's an open inch between slow-growing plants, he tucks something fast into it. This is interplanting, and it's how he squeezes a 5th and 6th crop out of beds that already look full. Between slow brassicas like cabbage and broccoli plants that take their time and won't fill in for weeks, he plants radishes which mature in about 28 days. The radishes are harvested and gone long before the cabbage needs that space. He'll slip quick lettuce into the same kind of gap. Under taller crops like tomatoes, he plants shade-tolerant greens that don't mind a little shadow, and along every edge he tucks marigolds, basil, and dill. Those flowers and herbs aren't decoration. Although my wife thought I'd lost my mind the first time I planted marigolds among the tomatoes. By August, she understood. The flowers weren't decoration. They were security. They confuse and repel the pests that hunt by scent, and they pull in the beneficial insects that eat the pests for you. Daniel's rule is plain: never let a pest find its dinner where it expects it. A bed of solid tomatoes is a billboard for a hornworm. A bed of tomatoes laced with basil and marigold and dill is a puzzle it can't solve. Here's where most people go wrong. They leave that bare soil between plants thinking they're being tidy, and all they're really doing is growing weeds and inviting pests. Bare ground is wasted ground. Do this, and you'll never look at an empty corner of a bed the same way again. Every gap becomes a chance for one more handful of food or one more line of pest defense. Daniel's garden, less than a quarter mile from my back door, doesn't have a square foot in it that isn't doing a job. Now, if what I'm walking you through here is making sense, and you're starting to see how the Amish do this differently than the way most of us were taught, let me point you to one thing. Every dense planting you just heard about rests on that deep living soil from step 1. Daniel's composting method, if the the pile that never stops, is laid out in Chapter 4 of my book, The 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol. It's $17 at backyardbuildbooks.com. If you're tired of weak soil and weak plants and you want a real system instead of another tip, that's where it lives. If you're watching on your TV, grab your phone and point the camera at the QR code on screen. Take your time, unlock it, open the camera, no rush at all. You can click the link right down there in the description below this video. All right, let's keep going. I'll be honest with you, I did every one of these myself for longer than I'd like to admit. The first mistake is spacing your plants by the wide numbers printed on the seed packet. Those numbers were written for tractor rows, and if you follow them, you'll leave half your bed or more growing nothing but bare dirt. Space on a grid instead, tight enough that the leaves just touch at maturity, and you'll double what that bed gives you. The second mistake is filling your beds with watery crops that don't store. A wall of lettuce and a glut of zucchini look like abundance in July, but they're gone by October and your winter is empty. Keep most of your space in calorie-dense keepers, potatoes, squash, onions, carrots, beans, and you'll still be eating in February. The third mistake is the one that cost me the most. You harvest a bed, you feel good about it, and you let it sit bare for the rest of the season. Here in Lancaster County, that's 2/3 of your growing year, producing absolutely nothing. The fix is to replant within a day or two of pulling a crop, and that habit leads me straight to the rule I promised you at the start. I told you at the start I'd share the one rule Daniel follows that lets a single bed feed his family 3 separate times in one season. Here it is. In his own words, an empty bed is a wasted bed. Daniel never lets soil rest while the sun is shining. The moment one crop comes out, another goes straight in. In one Lancaster County season, a single bed gives him 3 harvests. In early spring, he plants the cool crops, peas, lettuce, radishes, spinach, and they're out by the middle of June. The same bed then goes to a summer crop, bush beans or cucumbers or a determinate tomato, cleared by early September. And right behind that go the fall cool crops of kale, turnips, more spinach, harvested clear into November and overwintered. The discipline is simple. He replants within 24 to 48 hours of clearing a crop, and he top dresses a ½ inch of compost between each planting to recharge the soil. Here's the math, and it's why this works. Most single crops only hold a bed for 50 to 70 days. Here in Zone 6B, we get 180 frost-free days plus the shoulder seasons. Grow one crop in that bed and you've wasted 2/3 of the year. That one rule is what triples the output of the same 5,000 square feet. Before I let you go, I want to come back to that promise in the very first line, and that Daniel's family eats out of this garden through 3 winters. Growing all that food is only half of it. The other half is carrying it across the year, and that's Ruth's department. 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol. I walked through her root cellar. Potatoes into April, carrots packed in sand, the whole putting by system that makes a third winter possible. The full 30-day protocol is $17 at backyardbuildbooks.com. If you respect the old wisdom and you want the complete system, not loose tips, that's where to find it. If you're on the big screen, scan the QR code now, but go find your phone. I'll wait right here. On a phone already, just tap the link below. So that's how 1/8 of an acre feeds 6 people through 3 winters. 5 steps of deep soil, real calories, tight spacing, vertical growing, and filled gaps, all held together by one rule. An empty bed is a wasted bed. Daniel's been gardening that same plot for 50 years. His father before him, and on a few hundred Amish farms across Lancaster County right now. This is just how Tuesday looks. Try it on a single bed this season and drop a note in the comments to let me know how it goes. I'll see you in the next one.